I'm Rachel Anthony. Welcome back to my channel for another Writing Wednesday. Today I'm going to share with you my experience with creating and distributing my audiobook for my debut novel, A Time for Us, which released Tuesday of last week. So the audiobook portion was an experience. I'll just put it that way. A good experience in the end. I knew from the time I wanted to publish A Time for Us that I wanted it to have an audiobook to go with it. I know that many indie authors, especially debut indie authors, opt out of doing an audiobook for their novels, but I just couldn't imagine A Time for Us without an audiobook. So that decision was made way early in my publishing writing process. So the first thing I did as I got close to publishing, I asked my hybrid publisher that I went with if they had an audiobook service, and indeed they did. They charged $7,000 for the audiobook service. $7,000 US to produce the audiobook. That was way out of my budget, therefore not even an option for me. So then I needed to get to work to figure out how I was going to produce my audiobook. You know what I did next. I went to the internets and to YouTube. And I learned a vast amount of information, all extremely helpful. The first thing I determined was I needed a narrator. And I had the option of narrating it myself or hiring a narrator to narrate it for me. I instantly opted to hire a narrator for two primary reasons. One, I feel like I'm too close to the novel to be able to give it the quality that it needs from a narration perspective. And what that means is I didn't want to narrate my own novel for the same reason I didn't want to edit my own novel. As a writer, and I can only speak for myself, but I don't think I'm alone in this. Once you've written and read your manuscript so many times, it is embedded in your brain, and it is in your mind a certain way that isn't always what's actually on the written page. Our minds tend to gloss over some words, and it was important to me as an avid audiobook listener to have my audiobook be verbatim to the words on the page for the paperback and the ebook. Again, as an avid audiobook listener, it irks me a little bit when I listen to an audiobook, especially when I tend to immerse myself at times with the book, the written book, and the audiobook, and it's not the same. And I didn't want my readers and listeners to have that experience, and I felt like that would happen unintentionally if I were the narrator. So I opted to have someone else narrate it. The biggest reason I opted to have someone else narrate it is because I wanted my book on Audible. And the platform for Audible, which is ACX, has very stringent guidelines for audio recordings and audio quality. They have very stringent guidelines about the beats between the period at the end of the sentence and the start of the next sentence. The same for commas between words, and the actual audio quality itself. And between marketing, promoting my current book, writing the new book, and the corporate job, I just did not have the capacity to take on understanding and learning those guidelines and then applying them to produce an audiobook. So I felt it was in my best interest to hire someone to do that who already understood those guidelines and who had the audio set up to produce a high quality audio for the audiobook. So now that that decision was made, I needed to determine where I was going to find this narrator. ACX, the platform for Audible, has a vast pool of voice talent that you can select from their platform. I did not go with the voice talent from ACX for this reason. Once again, very stringent guidelines there that force the narrators to record, edit, and produce the video to the author after everything is fully recorded. Meaning they were going to narrate the book cover to cover before I, the author, had a chance to review any of the recordings. I felt like that was risky and potentially a huge waste of time. Because if there was anything in the early recordings that I wanted changed and it applied to all of the recordings, then that means that the narrator would have had to re-record the entire book again. I don't understand how that is an efficient process. So I did not opt for that. So in my research online, I saw that there were other options for finding voice talent, and I went with Upwork. Upwork has a vast number of narrators' voice talent that I was able to choose from. Please note, none of this is sponsored content. This is all based on my firsthand experience and decisions I made. So in going through Upwork, I found several people who I felt qualified for the type of narrator I wanted. Full disclosure, the voice of my book, I felt it was important to have that voice be the voice of a Black woman that could actually do Southern dialects. So that was very important to me, the highest criteria. So that's how I made my first cut of talent. Actually, that is not how I made my first cut. I made my first cut by cost, because cost was most important to me. Then I made my second cut based on the criteria, Black American woman. And then from there, I listened to the demos that they either had uploaded onto Upwork, or I requested that they send me demos of their work so I can actually listen to their voices and determine, which of them felt closest to who I envisioned the narrator being for A Time for Us. And then I made my short list of people I wanted to actually interview, and it should have been audition. Now, in hindsight, for the narrator. There were 3 people on that short list. The first person, who was highest on my list, if I'm being quite honest, withdrew from the process once she understood that my book was not a closed door love scene situation. I have a couple of love scenes. It is not erotica by any stretch of the imagination, not smut. If I do say so myself, it was very tasteful lovemaking scenes in my book, but it was still more than she was willing to read, and I respected that. I respect everyone's boundaries, so she respectfully withdrew from the process. And of the other 2 candidates that I had, I selected a lovely young lady who I feel did an amazing job in narrating the book. So when I say that I interviewed versus auditioning, I would recommend, and this is what I will do in the future, is I will, instead of the interview process of asking them questions about, their past work, what they enjoy doing, what their process is like, and have them ask me questions about the novel and, any potential triggers for them that they don't want to read. I would, in addition to that, give them an excerpt from the novel to actually read so I can hear my words in their voice. I don't feel like I made an error in the selection that I made from the narrator I chose. I just feel like had I done that within the interview process, we could have had one less edit in our process. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So, I selected my narrator, we agreed upon a cadence where she would deliver 5 chapters at a time for me to review. I would review them, get her back feedback, and then she would deliver the next 5 chapters along with updates, edits from the feedback that I gave her. So that cadence worked out perfectly, and the process that she and I worked through was amazing, and I look forward to working with her again in the future. I've already tapped her for book 2. She's already agreed, and so when the manuscript is ready, I will pass it along to her to begin the narration process. I'm really excited to work with her again. So that process in itself was great, and I have no regrets about the way I approached it. So I'll be looking over here for my notes to make sure that I don't miss anything. So when I say, I do want to go back to something. One of the other things that I recommend, even before you've selected your narrator, I think it's going to be important that you take the manuscript and annotate it in a very detailed state, because you need to tell the narrator how you want specific passages, specific dialogue especially, read in the narration. The narrator I chose is a phenomenal voice actor. And she does voice acting for animated characters, video games, commercials, things like that. In the first tranche of videos that she gave me, I realized that she was approaching the narration from a voice actor perspective. So she was really acting out the characters within the novel. And my vision was more from a storytelling perspective, with very subtle inflections of the voice when she's doing characters within the dialogue. Dialects, emotion. I want it to be felt and read, but not overly acted. And I found that she was doing her voice acting situation as narration. And so in the first few chapters, I gave her that feedback that that's really not what I was envisioning, and really gave her the vision of what I wanted. And she took that, applied it, and re-recorded those first 5 chapters, and then applied that to the rest of the 20 chapters of the book. Had I gone with one of the ACX narrators, they would have recorded, and this had been the situation, what they would have done is recorded the entire book in that same with that same affect, and I would not have liked it, and that would have resulted in them re-recording the whole thing all over again based on the way I wanted it recorded. I felt like the cadence that we had, with me being able to provide feedback on a regular basis that she can apply to not only those chapters but future chapters if that applied, made our recording and review process so efficient. Said all that to say, in order for you to get what you need from your narrator, make sure they understand what your vision is, and then within the manuscript itself, make sure you detail how you want that passage read, and that will save you a bunch of time. I know that in those sections where I did that in detail, my narrator nailed it like right out of the park, where when I left it up to her interpretation, it was sometimes lacking my vision. So do yourself and your narrator a solid and just put the details in there for them. So on to distribution at this point. So now your audio is all recorded, edited, reviewed, you're ready to go. How are you going to get it to your listeners? So ACX, Audible. That is, as we know, the biggest platform for audiobook distribution. So if you want to get your audiobook in front of as many listeners as possible, that's the route you're going to want to go. Just know that because Audible, ACX, Amazon, Jeff Bezos knows that they have the monopoly in the field, they take advantage of that by paying authors the least amount of royalties. The maximum, and I cannot stress enough, the maximum royalties you will get from Audible, ACX, is 45% of the retail price. And that will be if you are exclusive on on Audible, meaning that you cannot distribute anywhere else, including your own website. Then it will go down from there. For if you're still exclusive, if your listener is a subscriber to Audible and uses one of their credits to purchase your audiobook, that's the way you're going to get the maximum amount of royalties. If they are a subscriber and purchase your audiobook not using one of their credits, that's going to cut into your royalties. If they are a non-subscriber and purchase your audiobook from Audible, that's going to be the least amount of royalties you're going to get. Then if you are non-exclusive, which is the route that I took, the maximum amount of royalties you will get as the author is 25%. That means Audible will keep 75% of the retail price of your audiobook, and you as the author will get 25% maximum, which means that that's going to go down based on subscribers using their credits, subscribers not using their credits, and non-subscribers buying from Audible. So, yeah, you're going to have your audiobook in front of a massive amount of listeners, but you're just not going to get the royalties that you would get from other distributors. So, like I said, I went with the non-exclusive option for Audible, and that enabled me to distribute through other avenues. The other avenues are distribution aggregates, much like Ingram Spark is for ebooks and paperbacks and hardcovers, where they distribute to multiple platforms. These audiobook distribution aggregates do the same thing. So the one that I ended up going with is called Voices by INaudio, which used to be Findaway Voices. They distribute to 31 plus platforms, and plus libraries is the other. So with INaudio, you can upload your audiobook, and it will be put on Audible, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, libraries, among others. I will emphasize that if you want to go on Audible, you should go on Audible directly through ACX and not do it through an aggregate. Because if you do it through an aggregate, you're going to be hit twice by others taking part of your royalties, where with going through ACX, it's just you and ACX splitting the royalties. If you go through an aggregate, to have it distributed to Audible, is Audible already at a very low royalty rate, then the aggregate is also going to take a part of your royalties, and then at that point you're getting pennies on the dollar. So just note that it's in your best interest to go directly to ACX if you want your book distributed by Audible. So with Voices by INaudio, the author gets 80% of the net royalties. What that means is when they distribute to, let's say, Apple, for example, Apple Books, Apple's going to take 45% of that, of the retail price. Let's say your retail price is $15. Apple is going to take 45% of that, which equates to $6.75, which will leave a net of $8.25. Of that $8.25, Voices by INaudible is going to take 20% of that, which equates to $1.65, which will leave you as the author $6.60 of your audiobook sale. So of that $15, you, the author, will get $6.60. So they pay out monthly for your sales, and also and Voices by INaudible, and this is really the selling point for me. They distribute through Spotify, and Spotify owns Voices by INaudible. So if your audiobook is sold on Spotify, it's just the 80%. It's the 80% that you get. So they will keep 20%, you will get 80%. There's not that third cut because they're counting that as their own platform. So they're not double dipping. That's a good thing. So that's definitely a benefit of going through Voices by INaudible. Again, not sponsored, just my choice. So there are other aggregates out there. One is Authors Republic. Also, no upfront costs. They take royalties. You as the author would get 70% of the net royalty, just like I explained with Voices by INaudio. The platform on which your audiobook is bought, that platform is going to take a cut. Then Authors Republic will take its 30% cut, and then you as the author will get the rest. With Authors Republic, they do have a pool of narrators that you can choose from. Voices by INaudible does not. So that is definitely an advantage that Authors Republic has. Another one that I learned about is called Publish Drive. That one is a subscription service. So you as the author must subscribe to Publish Drive to get their services to distribute your audiobook. The issue with that is that you are going to pay $25 a month whether you sell an audiobook or not. That wasn't a selling point for me, so I did not opt for that. I have yet to sell a book on Voices by INaudio because I just uploaded my files 2 days ago, and it takes about 10 days to 3 weeks for them to complete their QC process. It's the same for ACX, by the way. So once you upload, you'll have to wait weeks before you are able to actually start selling your audiobook through any platform, which is the huge benefit of distributing directly on your website, which is what I'm also doing. With distributing directly on my website, I am able to use a distribution site. I'm using BookFunnel to upload my audiobook and then distribute directly to my listeners. There's a couple of advantages there. You keep all of the royalties. There is a fee for the BookFunnel platform, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that the advantage is after that fee, all the royalties are yours. You don't have to split it with a soul. The other thing is, as soon as your audio files are ready, you can upload them and start distributing immediately. So on my website, in addition to the ebook and the paperback, I also sell the audiobook. However, as an incentive to get people to buy the paperback and or the ebook from my website, I give them the audiobook for free. Direct distribution from your website is going to get you the highest royalties regardless of the format of the book. So if I can get people to buy my book directly from the site, I'm happy to give them the audiobook as a gift for doing that. And basically it costs me nothing. So that was definitely a couple of advantages. Having your ebook immediately available to distribute and being able to get the maximum amount of royalties if people want to actually buy the audiobook from your website, and or using it as an incentive to drive people to your site to buy your other products. So that's something I highly recommend. So let's talk cost. At the end of the day, my costs were $1,310 to produce and distribute my audiobook. That is broken down by $1,000 for my narrator plus $60 for the Upwork fee. So that for my narrator, it totaled $1,060. The cost of narration or voice talent I saw ranged from like $50 per finished hour to over $250 per finished hour. And basically what that means, for each hour of your book that was recorded, edited, and ready to distribute, that is the finished hour. So my narrator fell kind of in between the 50 and 250 and equated to $1,000 for her, and then $60 for the Upwork fee. I pay $250 a year to use the BookFunnel platform to distribute not only my audiobook, but also my ebook. So that cost I just put under my audiobook because $100 of that annual fee is specifically to distribute my audiobook. So I did the mid-author tier, and that was the lowest tier that I could go that included an audiobook option. And so that cost me a total of $250 per year, which totals $1,310 to have my audiobook produced and distributed. A huge difference from the $7,000. From the $7,000 that my hybrid publisher was going to charge me. So that was my experience. I think that you could absolutely record and distribute your audiobook for almost nothing. If you wanted to take on the task of narrating, had the equipment, and had the understood and was ready to apply the guidelines to be on Audible, the only thing it would cost you is whoever you chose to distribute through. So you can get out of, have a huge return on investment if you really are willing to put in the work yourself. Otherwise, you can do it, not for thousands of dollars, but definitely, depending upon the narrator you choose, you could absolutely do it for, $1,000, under $2,000 for sure. So I hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. It would help me out so much. And if you want to come back each week, please subscribe. I'll be back next Wednesday for another Writing Wednesday. See you then. Bye.